live, I guess. We have some guests who come from Victoria, which is Manager Olson's hometown, so I'm going to ask him to introduce them.
Yeah, tonight we have the Arrow of Light Den from PAC 589 in Victoria, and the boys are here. The Arrow of Light is the last stage of Cub Scouts, and as you notice in the back of the room, they're wearing the Boy Scout uniform shirts because they're transitioning into Boy Scouts, and they'll go through their Arrow of Light ceremony at the end of this season. So kudos to them and welcome to government.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to address the board on a matter that is not on the agenda? No hands? I would want to move to approval of the agenda. A couple of comments. We'll move number 8, reports, to the end so that we can get to the public hearing quicker. And item 7.1 on the consent agenda will be moved to action items. Will follow 11.1. Any other changes? We have a motion to approve the agenda. Thank you, Manager Robbins. Is there a second? Sure. Manager Shackleton, those in favor say aye. Opposed? I want to make sure I draw everyone's attention to the information item in our packet this evening, which is production of an article published in Lake and Reservoir Management magazine about the Christmas Lake Zero Muscle Rapid Response effort. And two of the authors of that study are staff persons here, Eric Gilseth and Jill Smith. So kudos to them, and it's great to see this work being shared. I think that's marvelous. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is there a second? Thank you. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? I will now open the public hearing on the MCWD Board of Managers to hear from those who are interested in Garden Park Restoration Project. Your input will be part of the manager's future deliberations in deciding whether to move forward with the project. The public hearing format will be as follows. There will be presentations by Ann Ketra, Edina Parks Director, and Renee Clark, Watershed District Planner and Project Manager, plus about 20 minutes probably. After that, I will invite individuals to come to the microphone and make your statements as described by Ms. Meyer. We will accept visual presentations such as PowerPoints or videos for the public record after the meeting, and they will be shared with the managers. At the conclusion of public comments, the board may have some requests for information from staff, and then the next step will be on November 9th, 2 weeks from now, when we will have a meeting at which we will decide whether to enter into this cooperative agreement with the City of Edina and go forward with the project, order the project, and begin the process of getting design work done. So that is the overall process. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Ketra and Ms. Clark.
Chair White, Board of Managers. With me tonight, as Chair White said, is Ann Kotry, the Director of Parks for the City of Edina. Prior to the public input tonight, Ann and I are going to review the project history, the City and Watershed District's history of collaboration, as well as how we got to the concept plan today. Through that, we'll talk about the City and Watershed District's goals and priorities with respect to this co-planning effort. We'll review the concept plan and project benefits, touch on the cooperative agreement framework, the project costs and funding plan, and schedule and next steps. First, the City of Edina and Minnehaha Creek Watershed District have a history of collaboration on historical capital projects at Pamela Park through our technical assistance with our permitting program, on actually work in Pamela Park recently on street reconstruction, cost share projects with city street reconstruction, and then through early coordination and co-planning on area redevelopment with the City of Edina. In 2014, the City and Watershed District entered a formal memorandum of understanding to identify areas of collaboration that included those listed before you. And under that MOU is where the district and city began collaboration that initiated the Art Park concept plan that we have today. It started with a city bridge replacement project at the West 54th Street Bridge. At that location, when the City of Edina came to the watershed district early to review future plans for bridge replacement, the watershed district had a known identification of a grade control structure or dam at that same location, which was identified in our 2003 and 2012 stream assessment of Minnehaha Creek as a biological impairment to the creek, degrading the ecological function and value of the creek by essentially turning a section of creek into more of a lake system. In that analysis of how we might address our ecological impact to the creek with the city's bridge project, the watershed district worked with the Interfluve company to analyze alternatives that remove the grade control structure to provide fish bypass, and looked at various elements of ecological enhancements with that. The public engagement we did at that time was in conjunction with the city's public engagement for the bridge project. At that time, we discovered there was an engaged kayak, regional kayak community that enjoyed what was referred to as a standing wave that occurred as part of the flow in the creek downstream of the grade control structure in the West 54th Street Bridge. Taking into account those concerns for that recreational value, we looked at alternatives to providing fish passage while maintaining the that standing wave. The board did order a project for a fish bypass alternative. It was essentially a large culvert bypass that was incorporated into the city's bridge reconstruction plans. When the city's project went out for bid, bids came in high, and then at the same time in 2014, we had a record high water event on Minnehaha Creek. Something as a result of those high flows, it was reported to us that that hydraulic condition in the creek changed and no longer occurs as this valued feature to a kayak community that we heard from quite loudly at that time. And so we received a letter of support to pursue a more holistic approach, looking back again at the idea to remove the grade control structure, and then also a letter of support from the city to co-plan and do the same. I would like to note that since we've been engaged in the public over the last year, there is also a lot of public value with the dam or grade control structure itself for tubing and kayaking, in addition to that recreational value of the standing wave that occurred downstream of the bridge. But two different places of excitement in the creek that different folks have enjoyed over the years. Moving forward to today, then, those bids were rejected. The district proceeded to enter into a partnership with the city to then co-plan a more holistic creek restoration in conjunction with a park plan with the city of Edina. The planning process for this started 1 year ago, October of 2016. Before you are the goals identified from our Memorandum of Understanding with the City of Edina. This is what we set out to do, combining our mission and authority and goals. They're restoration of the natural stream function and fish passage by actions including removal of the grade control structure, water resource and riparian habitat improvement, focusing on the creek, but then also looking at how the creek provides visual composition in the park, natural resources and recreational value, and public safety. This is from the cooperative agreement, which was kind of the basis for the planning of the Art Park concept plan. Ann and I are going to talk about how our respective strategic goals align with this effort that we've undertaken together.
In 2014 and 2015, the City of Edina and the Parks and Recreation Commission completed a Parks, Recreation, and Trails strategic plan. As we worked through this project and completed the master plan, we reviewed how it related to the strategic plan, and we found many ways as we were working through this that it related in terms of recommendations, strategies, and goals. So some of the items that we found were a direct correlation were providing greater access for passive recreation and interpretation, protect and improve Edina's water resources, provide more environmental education opportunities, replace insufficient play areas and playgrounds, and provide new facilities to fill those gaps, improve branding and wayfinding in our parks, provide additional community gathering areas, develop community-driven master plans for parks, and replace or decommission community park buildings that have outlived their lifespan. Some of the goals that directly relate to this project are to protect, enhance, and restore the city's natural resources and natural areas, create more resilient and sustainable parks, facilities, and landscapes, protect and restore Edina's water resources, and to increase facility accessibility and consistency throughout the city. And some of our strategies were to increase connections and access to natural areas and environmental resources, to coordinate with our engineering department to meet changing regulations and integrate those into our park master planning projects, to partner with our engineering department to identify opportunities to increase water quality throughout the city and identify opportunities to treat stormwater on park property to benefit both, to provide more attractive and passive recreation opportunities and educational efforts focused on water resources, to create a plan for replacement of outdated facilities, including the Arden Park shelter building, and to replace old and inadequate playground facilities.
I'll quickly review how the Watershed District prioritizes its efforts and engages in these types of strategic partnerships. First, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District is a 181 square mile geography. We act as a regional planning agency that collaborates with public and private partners to protect and improve the landscape. I'll talk later about some of the deep scientific understanding, which is the basis for our work, but our efforts really come to be on the ground through co-planning and aligning the goals and efforts of our partners with our own natural resources goals. The Watershed District is strategically focused in the 6 Mile Creek-Halstead Bay geography, which is a large developing area that drains to the most degraded bay on Lake Minnetonka, which is on the state's impaired waters list. We will be turning our focus to another large geography in Painter Creek that drains to a degraded bay on the state's impaired waters list, also on Lake Minnetonka. And then we are strategically focused in the 47 square mile Minnehaha Creek geography, which flows through 5 cities from Minnetonka to Minneapolis, including the Minneapolis chain of lakes. Within the system, there are decades of impacts as a result of urbanization. The creek has been ditched, dammed, wetlands have been filled, and the creek corridor has been fragmented. For illustration, there's a picture of a little bit upstream of Arden Park in an area of Hopkins and St. Louis Park in the 1930s. In 2010, you can see how urbanization has replaced wetlands and a meandering braided stream channel with parking lots, buildings, and the orange line represents the creek that has been ditched and kind of moved out of the way to make way for development. To deal with the issues as a result of urbanization, our strategies are to regionally treat stormwater, restore the creek channel, the ecological function and value of the channel, and the ecological function of the corridor and the green space around it. and doing that in a way that connects the resource again to communities. The issues that I'm talking about through this 22-mile Minnehaha Creek are not going to be addressed by one project with the Arden Park Restoration Project or any other one project we're doing, but will be incrementally addressed on a project-specific basis over time. And Arden Park just goes back to one example of how you can see we, with the City of Edina, are combining our goals for natural resources with community goals for infrastructure and parks in this case. Now we'll turn to the development, the process for the development of the concept plan for the park, review that plan, feedback we've heard, and talk about next steps. As I mentioned, in 2016, August is when we started this process with the city, with the MOU. The district hired a team of consultants, Hart Howerton and Interflu, who have experience working with the district on planning and implementation parks with creek enhancements. The community engagement process for this project began October of 2016, and the city approval process concluded on September 19th with their approval of the concept plan and the cooperative agreement for the park. Here's a summary of the public process. This was included in your packet. I've highlighted the public engagement meetings. These meetings were noticed to a little over 700 households in an area highlighted in yellow, bounded by West 50th and 56th Street and Wooddale in France. We sent out postcards to those residents for meetings that were hosted near the park in the city of Edina, where we went to the community first with our shared goals and asked the community, what are your goals for Arden Park? What are your concerns? And what does a future Arden Park look like? At meetings 1 and 2, we had about 30 people, about 50 people at meeting 3. And after meeting 3, we heard from a lot of folks in the public that hadn't been engaged in the planning so far, had concerns about certain elements, particularly removing the dam, and wanted to learn more. With the city of Edina, then, we paused the approval process, and through the community members, we noticed 2 more community meetings and listened to concerns, shared information, shared more science, and then continued the finalization of the concept plan, moving into where we are today. The public notice for tonight's meeting followed statutory requirements as well as district policy for establishing a project. It was noticed in the Star Tribune, published a press release in the City of Edina's official paper, the Sun Current, and that was also published in the Southwest Journal. We mailed and emailed notices to the cities and counties, and then I also reached out to local residents who have been engaged with us to ensure that they had the opportunity for our Board of Managers to hear what they think about our work in their community. Looking at Arden Park today, the center of the screen is the park in 1940. This is the clearest earliest photo we have of the park, and what I want to illustrate is how land use has changed in this part of Edina. I'm pointing out some features of Minnehaha Creek at that time, and then overlaying what the park looks like in the developed conditions. You can see where the creek has been moved for what is the playground on the north end, and some of the adjacent floodplain and wetland there fill in the middle. The dam that we're talking about, the grade control structure, was in existence in these earliest photos that we have, and we are currently not exactly clear on why that dam is there. here are the existing conditions today, and I'll get up and point for you. The north end is playground. There are some existing trails that the city has built in conjunction with the road reconstruction projects. The dam is right at the location of the 54th Street crossing. There's an ice hockey rink. There is a trail and steps going down. And there's an existing warming hut for free skate for this area that gets flooded in the winter and for the ice hockey rink. The park is approximately 17 acres, and what I've highlighted here is the area that is primarily, open usable space, which is approximately 5 acres. As a result of the community engagement, the first 3 meetings and then the subsequent meetings, the consistent themes throughout were the value of the natural rustic character of the park in this really urbanized place in Edina. People really have a high value for nature, birds, animals that they see in the park, the ability to kind of feel like you're in the woods, walking around in this area. Recreation has consistently throughout been very highly valued by the community. Kayaking, tubing, and then the creek is also a regional resource that flows 22 miles through Arden Park. Gathering spaces were important to the folks. We heard a lot about facility upgrades. The shelter building, which I understand is about 15 years old and identified for replacement, as well as playground upgrades. This is the proposed concept plan for the park. The plan offers new tubing and kayaking loops, one in the north end of the park, highlighted in red, where there will be access to get in and out of the creek to do loops, or do a longer loop down to West 54th Street, which would allow portage without crossing 54th Street. This was a safety concern that was identified through in some of the city's planning documents, as well as heard during the public input process. There's a new shelter building proposed. As you can see, the remeandered creek in this concept plan, because of its location right on the bank of the creek, the existing shelter building would be moved. And then fishing is preserved downstream of West 54th Street Bridge. That was a common theme and a big concern, particularly later in the public input process. The downstream area of the bridge is a really valued fishing spot, and that will be maintained as part of the project. This is a concept rendering of the park. The ecological benefits include a mile of newly connected stream to 8 miles downstream, over 500 feet of new stream channel, and then, as I mentioned, the dam backs up water and creates essentially a lake system behind it. Taking the dam out and restoring a flowing creek system provides about 16,000 square feet of riffles, pools, and woody debris, which increase biological diversity. And then I'll continue to talk about this, but preservation of trees is a concern not only to the watershed district for their many ecological benefits, but to the community as well. And within the open space of Arden Park, around the dam, there are several specimen trees that we would save as part of final design of Arden Park. This is a view of the upstream system of Arden Park today, which you can see is more of a still backwater. This is looking downstream of West 54th Street Bridge, where you can see riffles and moving creek, and that is the condition we hope to restore in conjunction with the project. Again, some of the issues as a result of the concept plan are the stream alignment and how that affects loss of trees, the final trails and their location, the creek edge and access, and then the in-stream design around the dam specifically, maintaining slope and recreational value there, as well as recreational value throughout the corridor. Looking at that area downstream of the bridge, that's been important for fishing. This is the area where the standing wave used to form in certain flow conditions of the creek. That fishing hole will not be filled in as part of the project. This is that same area downstream. High flows have over-widened the creek in this area, which is typical downstream of restriction and a dam. And we have money as part of the FEMA repairs for Minnehaha Creek to repair, do some of these repairs to the bank. I'll quickly review the science behind the projected ecological improvements of the project. Metrics we looked at are stream health, the wetlands, the amount of wetlands and the quality of wetlands, water quality, and then habitat improvements with the change of stream characteristics. Stream health has been evaluated by the creek using this MPCA habitat assessment. There are two scores there, one from 2015 and 2017. Filling out this form, a staff person essentially does an assessment of physical conditions of the creek. Filling out that same form using projected design criteria from the concept plan, we are greatly increasing the habitat score for the creek. While it's hard to predict what happens to the Index of Biological Integrity, the IBI, that's one of the things that's discussed in the TMDL report from the Minnehaha Creek impairment. This is a graph from the PCA that correlates that stream health assessment score with the biological condition, and you can see that as you increase, and this is from the Pollution Control Agency, as the stream health assessment score increases, you're increasing that IBI score as well. So we are predicting an increased IBI score for the creek. The stream attributes that we expect to change. I've mentioned how it's a ponded backwater system, as I showed you in the photo before. We would have 16,000 square feet of pools and riffles where none exist today, and we are greatly increasing channel length. This is an image of the wetland delineation and an assessment of, based on the concept design, how the wetland area will change. The purple line is the wetland delineation today, and then the outline, the orange, shows the new wetland and floodplain forest. Floodplain forest is critical urban habitat, which we are predicting to increase as a result of the project. Water quality treatment in the corridor is one of the district's strategic tools to improve the downstream water resources as Lake Hiawatha is impaired for nutrients. There are several stormwater discharges to Minnehaha Creek through this location. And 5 of them will come out and be treated through infiltration and filtration basins. The concept study is looking at treating about 107 acres of stormwater, removing approximately 30 pounds of phosphorus. Floodplain change and storage, changes to upstream and downstream water levels, has been assessed as part of the concept plan, and it's been a concern of the community. what happens to water levels upstream and downstream? There'd be no change in water levels upstream and downstream. There'd be some flood attenuation within the park. However, by adding more stream channel, however, the flood elevations upstream and downstream will not change. A community benefit of the project that's illustrated in this figure is the extent of flooding. The orange area, yellow-orange area, is the current extent of flooding today. The blue area is the proposed extent of flooding. The area that is reduced is the green space, the active play area of Arden Park. While it's a 17-acre park that I showed you earlier, a small amount of that is really active play space. The project makes the active play space drier more of the time, which Ann has talked to council about. This area has been, programming has been taken out of the park basically due to the wet, soggy conditions here. The district did a tree survey as part of the concept plan development, and tree impacts, as I said, are a concern for the watershed district and the community. The district did an inventory of trees greater than 8 inches in a 200-foot corridor of the stream, overlaying the extent of impact of the concept plan alignment. There are 90 trees that would be impacted. What I've noted in the past, and what's important to note, that as part of a formal design process, the alignment of the stream would be maximized to avoid trees, particularly specimen trees, to the greatest extent possible, to maximize ecological benefit and find the sweet spot of stream length. So this is a concept plan that if the project moves into formal design, one of the first steps of that formal design process would be looking at stream alignment with respect to those other conditions. This is a stream health summary of the existing and proposed conditions for stream health, wetlands, water quality, and the actual physical attributes of the stream. Community benefits. There is a new multi-purpose shelter building proposed. Improved access to Minnehaha Creek. Today there is really great access at the West 54th Street Bridge. It's a really active play area and a highly valued recreational area. While that project will still be accessible, there will still be creek access there. There'll be creek access visually and physically throughout Arden Park, and more places to recreate without, like I said, crossing West 54th Street to Portage. This is an example of what a creek access point might look like. I know a concern from the community is maintaining that rustic nature of the park, and it is the district's and the city's desire to provide creek access formally and informally in a way that provides the ecological lift and integrity that we're looking to restore. And this is a reference reach of Minnehaha Creek to look at what pools and riffles and slope might look like in a more active area of the park. For the public, and then just to review the Board of Managers, I'm going to go through one project example of where we've moved the creek before for what to expect when construction of this magnitude occurs. This is the Methodist Hospital project that was designed by our same consultant, Interfluve, with Methodist Hospital, who actually hired Interfluve and led this project with support of the Watershed District back in 2009. We took the ditched creek, remeandered it, added gravel beds for fish and fish spawning, rebuilt new banks, added woody debris for habitat and fish. And this is that finished project about 3 months after construction, and this is what that project looked like the following September. So you can see construction's quite impactful, but the natural area rebounds quite quickly. I'll review the cooperative agreement terms, the project cost estimates, and schedule now. Essentially, the cooperative agreement, which was provided in your packet, builds on the way the memorandum of understanding was drafted, where we continue to co-plan. The district would retain the consultant for design. The city and the district would be part of that design team together, and there would be 4 checkpoints with the city and watershed district at 30, 60, 90%, and then at bid award, where the city and the watershed district can assess moving forward. The district would bid the contract and contract for construction, and then the adjustments after bid opening would be based on price. For example, if the stormwater features came in, widely over budget, it would be the boards and managers' discretion to not do that, for example. The design costs are shared approximately 50% according to those elements in the agreement. This is the cost estimate summary. The full breakdown was provided as an attachment in your packet. The total project construction estimate based on the concept plan is just over $4 million, with approximately $1.9 million of watershed district costs and $2.1 million of city costs. And you can see where those costs are shared and broken out. Essentially, the city is responsible for the facilities and paths. The city and watershed district are sharing costs for creek and trail connections, the boardwalk on the north end of the park, and the vegetative restoration component. The watershed district is assuming the cost for the creek restoration, which includes demolition of the existing shelter building, which our creek project is dependent on, and we are sharing stormwater management costs. On the right, I have grant funds that have been identified. Those funds actually have been applied for, and we are awaiting to see if we will get those. And there actually, I think, is a second opportunity next year based on construction schedule to look at those funds. Watershed district funding is, as we've discussed a bit during our budgeting process, looked at spread over 2 years in 2018 and 2019. There's no action requested of the board tonight. This will come back for board discussion and action on November 9th. And there it will be the board's decision to approve the concept plan and formally order the project, and then approve a cooperative agreement, the draft which was provided in the packet. If the board does decide to approve the concept plan and authorize the formal agreement, it will then consider approving a contract and scope of services for Interfluve as a lead designer to begin design of the project with the city. At this time, we are looking at design in all of 2018 with the plan to begin construction beginning of 2019.
We'll open it to members of the public. If anyone would like to speak, and come to the microphone.
My name is Jim Groats, and I live at 5513 Park Place in Edina. I have 2 points. As the watershed is proposing major surgery on Arden Park, I decided to get second opinions. On Tuesday of this week, I met with 3 at the office of the Hennepin County Surveyor for over an hour. I had spotted possible title problems in the county online application at Arden Park and wanted answers. I was led to believe by the county there appears to be title issues between the 8 separate parcels that make up the park. This area shown in red based on county input was described to have possibly title defaulted to the state of Minnesota. This problem shows up in the county app as no results found. Bottom line, it appears the city of Edina does not have the authority to allow the district to proceed with this project. The county does not agree with the city. There are issues on some of the land based on the legal descriptions of the 3 plats that make up the park. The city has not cleared up these title problems. Part of this problem was caused by the city filling in former creek channel by grading to push the creek west within the creek bottoms. As you can see on the aerials I purchased at the county, more from next speaker. My second point, the district is proposing to solve the elevation problem from the dam removal with the most amount of disruption in terms of both cost to taxpayers and cost to the ecology. This proposal has a very high ecology cost, including the hundreds of trees that are to be cut down for the meanders, more from speaker to follow on trees. An alternative that stays within the existing creek bottoms was not explored. Only the highest cost alternative was explored. Mr. Ian Chisholm of the Minnesota DNR stated a low-cost alternative could be explored that makes up the elevation from the creek bottoms starting north of Arden and extending south of Arden, even towards 56th Street. I'm aware of areas that extend to 56th Street that could be part of a low-cost approach, both ecology and taxpayers saving hundreds of trees and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why is the district wanting to restore meanders that never existed? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kurtz.
Good evening, my name is John Crabtree. I live at 5408 Oaklawn Avenue, which is just south and west of these diagrams which are here on the picture. You'll see here in front of you 2 aerial photographs, one of Arden Park in 1957, the second one in 2015. The overlays, which are done in yellow, are the same on both maps, and they were done, came from Hennepin County. So I just really wanted to explain a little bit further where Mr. Groats got his red area from on his map. You'll see on this one, I'll go back to 1957 first. This whole area was platted, the area on each side of the creek was platted, and the dotted line here, which then runs down in this direction, down here, was basically the area between the plat on the east side and the plat on the west side. And you can actually see if this has been sent to you electronically. The line of the creek there in 1957 was fairly closely following the area between the 2 plats. That area was then subsequently filled in when the line of the creek was then moved to the west, and actually it would appear from these drawings then that the creek was widened. So then that basically explains to you, I think, where the 2 areas on that drawing came from. And I'm also going to give you a copy of this electronically as well. It shows 5 of the 8 parcels of land involved in here. There's one large parcel down the west side of the creek, and then there's a little piece in here. There's a piece in here. This land, the land which is down there, which is not part of the original plat. There's a piece here. So there are 5 pieces of property there which comprise the area of this project. I would also like to reiterate the points made by Mr. Groats this evening. But the first thing I'd say is There seems to be some issue as to exactly who owns what of this particular land, and I believe that they need to be resolved. I also believe that it also needs to be investigated as to whether there are any reversionary rights which may arise from the change of the use of the land when it was originally made over to the city. I'd really reiterate the point made by Mr. Groats as well. We have not seen a proposal tonight for restoration of the creek within the existing creek bottoms, and I believe that should be done with a comparative cost to lay against the proposal which you have shown this evening. Final point, going back to the sogginess of the field, this area in here was the first skating rink in Edina, and that information came to us from information of the Edina Historical Society from an audit of the whole park system in the early 1960s. If you want to have a skating rink, you need to grade it so it doesn't drain, and that's the reason it was done. Thank you.
Thank you, Scrooge. Is there another speaker?
Thank you for taking my comments tonight. My name is Jeff Workinger. I live at 5224 Kellogg Avenue, and I'm in the middle of the notice area and have lived along the creek and around the area since 1968. I'm not really in favor of changing the course of the creek through the earlier discussions with the watershed district and the city, because I really don't and didn't understand whether the benefits that we're talking about will occur. So I believe the proposal that you're looking at this evening is probably worthwhile if there's evidence that you can deliver on the scientific, ecological improvements. I have to get your terms right. And I would, if you decide to go ahead with this, I would like you to be able to report to the public the baseline data before and after, as well as the projected improvements that you would expect to garner from this expense. It's not trivial expense, of course, you understand, and I don't have to remind you of that. The reason I'm really here this evening is because, not because I'm necessarily against removing the dam, it's what is the park going to look like when we're finished? This is major. This is like pulling teeth and trying to find a nice crown to put back in there or some dentures. You know, it's not that easy to come up with a result that's going to match the quality, and as Renee and Ann have referred to, the rustic nature of the park. It's a tremendous value to the neighborhood. Yes, we talk about preserving trees and how many will have to go. That's understood as part of the project. But what trees are going to be put back? How are we going to regain the rustic nature of what we've got now? Yes, the creek will be better. It may have a better stream health summary profile. I don't know if that's the right word. How much time does that mean? Thank you. So I'd like, if you would be, have the district be responsible reporting back if you decide to proceed. I'd like some trees added that may not be in the plan today, whether that's your responsibility or whether that falls on a shared responsibility with the city, particularly as you realign the creek. You're disturbing the whole look of the park. I appreciate the fact that you guys serve with the board of managers. It's appreciated that you do that. The pay is exorbitant. So thank you, and please give this consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Workner. Is there another speaker?
Hi, my name is Jerry O'Brien. I live at 5333 Minnehaha Boulevard. I sent you an email today with a 3-page memo titled 5 Oddities in regards to the Arden Park redevelopment. I'm not going to reiterate it. I just wanted to put a face to the name so you can see that I'm a real person who wrote that memo. I hope that you will take the time to read it. And I do appreciate your service here and your dedication of your nights to making our town better. I was recently elected to serve on the Arden Park Neighborhood Association Steering Committee, which is not anywhere near as serious a situation as what you're dealing with. I have also served on the board of the United Way. I serve currently on the board of the Minnesota Community Foundation. I also serve on the St. Paul Foundation. So when you read this memo that I sent you, which discusses governance issues, I hope you recognize that it was written with a serious tone because it's a serious topic. And I would appreciate if you would take the time to read the memo and contemplate it before you vote next week. If you don't have any questions for me, and if we're not able to put the video on, I sent a 50-second video that I hope you watch just so you get the atmospheric perspective of what's going on at the park before the project begins. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. Another speaker?
My name is Heather Beal. I have lived at 4236 Crocker Avenue in Edina, Minnesota for 24 and a half years. I was an early and outspoken advocate for a more integrated collaboration between Edina and the Watershed District, and I continue to advocate for that. As a journalist, columnist, and author, I have researched and written about sustainable development for over 2 decades. As a community activist, I have put my values into practice by orchestrating the successful completion of a Sustainable Communities demonstration project with the MPCA, lobbying in favor of Minnesota's Clean Water Land and Legacy Amendment, collaborating with the Freshwater Society and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District to complete a demonstration project that employs best practices for stormwater management, and advocating for the City of Edina's tree ordinance, which became effective on July 1st, 2015. It is this final activity that brings me here tonight. When I learned that at least 90 trees with trunks 8 inches or greater in diameter at chest height will be removed to make way for a meandering creek, I was astonished. Why would the Watershed District recommend doing this when proponents of our own city's tree ordinance shared the following facts with us just a few short years ago? In the 6 years preceding the passage of the tree ordinance, over 700 mature trees had been removed in Edina. The presence of mature trees has a positive impact on property values. A mature tree can absorb 100 gallons of water per day. For every 5% loss in tree cover, stormwater is increased by 2%. Trees filter stormwater and reduce site erosion. I am mystified. Why tear out so many trees to meander a creek? I won't fall on my sword to save buckthorn or other invasive species. I realize it's possible that a select number of trees might have to be removed for good forestry practices. However, 90, possibly hundreds of trees? This cut flies in the face of our city's tree ordinance and in the face of what city staff told our neighborhood, I live in Morningside, in October of 2014. It also contradicts federal studies I've reviewed. In my opinion, sustainable development is minimally invasive, minimally intrusive. It celebrates and works together with the best that nature has to offer. I advocate that the details of which trees specifically are affected be worked out and communicated to the taxpayers of Edina as soon as possible. Prior to when all of you decide whether or not to approve the concept plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gill. Another speaker? Is there another speaker?
My name is Tom Fletcher, property owner at 5137 Halifax Avenue. I would respectfully request that the board seriously consider taking that line item called creek restoration for $1,243,000 out of the project. By the way, I think creek restoration is a misnomer because A, no one really knows what the creek looked like. And if you really go back to the days of the beavers could have built a similar dam, had a similar pool, and they could have ended up with similar Minnesota ECA spring health scores because the effects probably would have been very similar since the beaver dam can be up to 6 feet high and this one's about 4 feet high. So as a practical matter, I do think restoration is a misnomer. If you look at that 1.23 million in the thing, I've never seen anything in the documentation. The watershed has limited resources. How does that compare to other projects? When I read the draft management plan, it indicates that the focus is on highest pollutant areas such as St. Louis Park and Hopkins, or downstream Minneapolis and urban areas, or upstream with the areas I referred to in Renee's presentation about Lake Minnetonka. And this doesn't really seem to fit as a high-profile area. You look at the pictures of St. Louis Park, Hopkins, highly developed. You look at our park, it's got trees. I mean, this is not a problem. I mean, I look at it, I go, what is the problem we are trying to solve here? Particularly when if you're looking at this an example, survey of riparian buffers, you look at the science by North Carolina State University, their survey says the zone should remain undisturbed. Therefore, tree removal is generally not permitted. If anyone wants, I can get you a citation. But typically, what you do is you try to keep trees around the creek. You don't come in with a project that would remove whatever trees there are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. Is there another speaker? Is there another speaker?
Good evening. My name is Steve Brown. I live at 5528 Halifax Lane. The location is about half a mile below the park that's being discussed. I've lived in that location for about 19 years. I've used the park extensively. Our 14-year-old daughter grew up playing on the playground at the park. We've canoed to Minnehaha Creek. We've kayaked part of it. We've tubed up and down the creek many times. It's a delightful park, but it is a park that is, in my opinion, poorly developed. It's a park that routinely floods in the open spaces, so they're unusable. Most of the facilities are in disrepair and not appreciated by most of the people who use the park. I think the park is underutilized. I've been very excited that this effort has been undertaken. I think it's a tremendous opportunity to improve an underdeveloped park. I would like to compliment both the Watershed District and the city for the amount of time and effort they put into listening and asking for public input. I think you saw that there were 5 public hearings. In addition to that, I think the city took the extraordinary step of taking another public hearing after their initial meeting, feeling that there was an additional opportunity for public input. After all of that discussion, the city has agreed to go ahead with this project. I think that makes sense. I think they listened very carefully to all of the public input. I think they're coming down on the side that says, let's move forward. We're going to see more steps in this process. We'll have an additional design work being done. There's going to be many more opportunities, as you saw in the chart, for the city to look at this proposal and determine, does it continue to make sense or do we need to make some changes? But on balance, it seems like it's a very strong proposal. It's been very well thought out, and I'm looking forward to the park being improved as a result of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there another speaker? Is there another speaker? I feel like an auctioneer. Is there another speaker? We'll now close the public hearing. Thank you very much, all of you. If we can get Ms. Clark, and I'm going to pronounce it right this time,
The photo was from 1940. Manager Shackleton managers. We have one earlier photo that I believe is 1938, which looks similar but not as clear. So that's 1940, and those are the identified features, and that's the
What is the, in the area in the middle, on the earlier photograph, do you know what that identifies? That loop? It looks like an island for an uneducated viewer who've never seen this image before.
right. It's possible that it's kind of a former oxbow of, the creek could have been over there, and, it's hard to say how it changed after that dam was put in, because all our photos are after the dam.
For some reason, I'm not going to call on anybody else. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, Patry?
Katri.
Katri, sorry.
It's okay.
Had the issue of the title, has that ever been any potential title issues? Is that something you've heard in the past? Is that something the council is?
I'm sorry it is not. Tonight was the first I ever heard of that.
Okay, thank you.
We'd be happy to look into it tomorrow.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions, Manager Olson?
Point of clarification. Would you quickly or briefly describe why, after the high water, the standing wave disappeared?
Sure. Manager Olson managers, there is a slab of concrete as that it's somewhat, I think, connected to the bridge abutments, but there's a slab of concrete in the creek, and what we think is that it shifted slightly. So when water comes rushing under the bridge, the kind of hydraulic condition of the water that caused that to form apparently didn't.
So there was a shift in material there.
Right.
Okay. The fish passage that was ordered, what part was ordered? Just the design part?
The board ordered a project to design a fish passage, which was a kind of a culvert essentially to allow fish to get around the dam. And the district designed that and did not move forward with it.
Okay, so we did complete what we set out to do. Okay. As the 90 trees come down and the project would be put in, what are the steps after that for trees? I know it's yet to be designed and all that, but what would you anticipate?
Sure.
Restoration included.
Manager Olson managers, yes, the number of trees would be something less than 90 based on our concept plan and our tree survey. That's the information we have. Trees that would be toppled as part of the project would be reused, similar to the pictures I showed of the Methodist Remeander project in the creek to create habitat and build a channel. The lack of woody debris in the creek corridor as a whole has been identified as a cause of degraded ecological conditions in the creek system.
Okay. Thank you.
Manager Shackleton.
Yeah. I guess I have two follow-up questions on that. One of them is on the standing wave piece. Earlier tonight, I Googled 54th Whitewater Edina because I was here at that meeting in 2014 when we were talking about, when we were about to actually approve this project, and we were going to include elements to maintain the standing wave. And having never wanted to dabble in whitewater because I've suffered enough concussions in my life, I was like, if other people want to do that, that's great. But the element that caused the standing wave washed away. So tonight when I Googled, and I watched the video that was sent earlier and was told that was a standing wave, and having never wanted to do whitewater, but I always thought it was amazing, I knew that was not a standing wave. That is just a drop, as happens on many streams, and I've actually popped rivets in my that drop. So I'll get to the question of the shift. But on the standing wave piece, when I Googled 54th Edina and Whitewater, I found video of people wearing helmets in whitewater canoes surfing on the standing wave immediately downstream from the bridge, which is the exact opposite side of the bridge as the video that was sent out tonight. So I don't know that we have an issue about whitewater kayaking and standing wave, but the question that Manager Olson asked about the shift on the dam and having actually popped rivets on at that point, what happened there, and how is the shift on an apron on a dam not a public safety issue? Because when that happens in the city of Minneapolis, they shut down the water body to traffic.
The manager, Shackleton managers, the dam didn't move. It's a piece of, I guess an apron in the creek underneath the bridge, downstream of the dam.
Between the dam and the bridge?
Nope, just downstream of the dam. This is an old photo of the bridge, somewhat looking upstream and across from the side. That concrete sill is like right here. You can kind of see it.
That's different from what was in the video that was sent to us.
Manager, Shackleton managers, this area has recreational value, at the time of that condition to this, whitewater kayaking group. And that was, who came to the table at the time of our engagement with the city and that we heard from really loudly. We reached out to them as part of this planning process, and members did attend our meetings and were, expressed support of incorporating a new whitewater feature, which we, that there's not really that level of detailed design, but which we discussed as part of the concept plan, and how that might align with ecological restoration. And it doesn't very well, but your general canoeing and kayaking pleasure type of things that kids do, which happens a lot on the dam and over the waterfall that goes over the dam today, and that's valued by a different group of the community and valued today, and that's different than this engaged group that we heard from in 2014.
So nothing has shifted on the drop?
The drop is essentially a kind of a pile of rocks, it looks like, with cement over it.
Okay. That has not changed.
It not appreciably to cause a change in recreational conditions. It's been, I think in the 60s, it's been repaired. And looking at old photos, there's been changes around it. But, from a recreational point of view, no.
Okay. So I guess my real question is, it is not the element that Manager Olson mentioned, and it has that. I was confused. Is that correct?
Just that there's two kind of recreational places here
Sure.
that are, have value to different groups of folk.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Manager Rockets.
Is there a more natural way of allowing the fish to go through that area? Are you going to alter the bottom of that stream?
So, Manager Rognus managers, when the bypass pipe was, that alternative was abandoned by the Board of Managers and recommended to staff to work with the city on an approach that goes back to taking out the dam, the grade control structure, but doing it in a way that provides ecological restoration to the creek corridor and accomplishes multiple goals of the watershed district, including stormwater management and corridor connection and restoration, and doing that in a way that intersects with the city's goals for Arden Park, which Ann touched on earlier. So the dam in this project, this restoration project, comes out. The creek is remeandered, and fish can navigate naturally.
Are there other questions from managers? Thank you very much. We'll be looking at all the materials submitted, and I know you will too. And then on the 9th, we'll have a discussion again. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see the CAC folks moving forward here. Manager Miller has a comment that he thought of after the presentation.
I lived in the same house for 37 years, and we got an acre, and it's on a wetland, and we got a lot of trees sticking around. Box elders, the other night I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, chainsaws. Power company was out with a big wind, guy across the pond, trees took down us, and I don't know why in the middle of the night they decided to clear the trees, but they were clearing the trees for another 2 hours with chainsaws in the middle of the night. Most of these areas, as you saw in the 1940s, it was farmland, or it was a forest. And the subsequent trees are not quality trees, they're junk trees. And I'm paying a lot of money in removing these junk trees in my yard because they twist over and they're all, not all trees are created equal is what I'm trying to say. And the cottonwoods, when they get old, are really dangerous. They're huge, and the limbs break off, and so I think we got to be really careful about this tree inventory to make sure that the trees that we're talking about saving are worthwhile saving, and that we replace them with the appropriate tree for the climate and the setting and everything else, because there's 700 trees that have been removed. I think probably half of them should have been removed because they're dangerous and junk trees. But nevertheless, I agree with the idea that we should do everything we can to preserve the quality of the park with maintaining as many trees as possible that are worthwhile saving and aren't going to become dangerous.
Thank you. We'll move to item, I'm confused, 11.1. Mr. Whisker, resolution 17067. We had some of those conversations when we were doing that little wetland of Peter Creek. Trees that more or less dying, lots of replanting. I'm glad you remember that too, Evangelist. Mr. Whisker.
Chair White, managers, resolution 17067 is in the packet this evening, and it authorizes the execution of a master finance agreement between Carver County and the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. As you know, the agreement provides up to $25 million in long-term public financing for the 6 Mile Halsted Bay program through Carver County issuance of AAA rated general obligation bonds. The board's received this information, the draft agreement, draft resolution, and the presentation a couple different times now over the last 60 days. And so unless the board so chooses, I'm not planning on recapping all that presentation. That said, before you consider the resolution, I'd like to note again for the record my thanks to everybody involved. President White, Manager Olson, who's done a lot of legwork on this one, Manager Miller for his finance expertise, obviously Mr. Smith for helping us draft the document and be a go-between with Carver County Bond Council and Anna Brown, who's been in all the meetings and really helped pull things together. It's a team effort, and I think the results of that effort were on display on October 17th when the Carver County Board unanimously approved the agreement. Manager Olson was there and can editorialize, but it was a fun meeting, which you don't hear about often when you're talking about public finance. No offense, Manager Miller. But the commissioners expressed an inordinate amount of support for the district shift and approach. They noted the level of community support that the watershed's garnered over several years. And I think Commissioner Malushnik and Commissioner Workman were particularly outspoken and vocal in praising Manager Olson and the entire board for, quote, turning the organization around. They commended board leadership in creating a clear, focused, and strategic vision for the area, which they said would help Carver County manage the challenges and opportunities associated with the projected growth in that area over the next 10 to 20 years. And they said that that level of vision and long-range planning was unusual for public agencies, mainly because it's difficult. Commissioner Workman, he noted that $25 million was a large number even for somebody that spent some time down in the legislature. But he noted that it was manageable because of the county's faith in the watershed district's ability to, quote, pull it off and execute. He called it a legacy vote because the work's going to take a long time, and all the good works might happen after many of the commissioners are gone. So I think, just want to say thank you again. I think the board should be pretty proud, and it was exciting to be there with Carver County that we've worked with a long time to sort of change their attitudes and perspectives, and I think we all left the meeting feeling like they were true partners, and that we're all excited to carry the good work forward and keep getting built infrastructure in the ground. So.
With that, I move approval.
Second. Well, we're fighting for the seconds. Any more discussion, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, everyone.
You know, this I can't emphasize enough. This is a big deal.
It is.
And Manager Olson, I really want to commend you for using all your goodwill in River County for setting the stage for this, because it was.
That's Carver County calling.
This is it's really when you think of history that we've had and other times and places and where we are now, it's really a compliment to both the staff and to Manager Olson to be where we are. I mean, the quotes from the commissioners there should be put in a flag someplace. Make sure they don't forget.
It's really wonderful that we're working with Carver County. It's a big partner for us. Item 7.1. We can move, let's leave 7.1.
Did I get the agenda wrong here?
We have changed the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll move to item 12.1.
Okay. Well, good evening, Chair White, Board Managers. I think tonight Darren and I are here in follow-up to some recent Citizens Advisory Committee discussions, and I'm going to lay out some ideas for how the board and Citizens Advisory Committee and staff might work together to create a little bit more focus and direction to continue enhancing how we use our incredibly diverse, talented, and engaged Citizens Advisory Committee. So with that said, I think tonight's the start of a conversation. Ideally, we'd like to finish that conversation in December ahead of setting a 2018 agenda for the Citizens Advisory Committee. And really, we're just going to outline a couple different ideas and concepts for how we might create a little bit more structure, a little bit more focus and direction. We want to get board ideas and feedback on if what we're outlining makes sense at all. And then from there, we would go work with the CAC and staff, refine some concepts, and bring back a plan for setting an agenda for 2018 for the CAC. We do that in December. So I think Darren is going to provide background from his perspective as serving as the staff liaison or manager for the Citizens Advisory Committee since 2014. He's going to walk through why we have the Citizens Advisory Committee and the history and sort of the current junction point, how we've currently evolved to be using the Advisory Committee, and then transition, and I will outline some concepts that might help focus the CAC by walking through the trajectory of alignment that the board's created over the last 3 or 4 years, review the strategic priorities of the organization, and talk about some ideas about how we might link and align the CAC with those priorities. And then we'll take questions and discussion.
Mr. Lochner.
Thank you, James, Board of Managers. As James outlined before, we're here to look for some guidance as we further direct the Citizen Advisory Committee. Just to give you a little background, as you're probably well aware, the state statute provides a basic framework for the appointment of the Citizen Advisory Committee on an annual basis. It really provides some really broad kind of overview on the formation of this body, and it really leaves it up to the Board of Managers and the Citizen Advisory Committee themselves to provide their further direction on an annual basis. So basically, within the state statute, it basically states that the Citizen Advisory Committee should advise and assist the managers and help the Board of Managers make recommendations on an annual basis. As you're aware, the Citizen Advisory Committee are appointed in December of each year. They serve 1-year terms from January till December. Just to give you a context of this current Citizen Advisory Committee, we have 19 members. 13 returned from the previous year, and we had 16 new members. And so that kind of creates the opportunity of we have those returning members, but there always is a need to provide some onboarding support for new members as they join the Citizen Advisory Committee. From my context, I've been the staff liaison since the fall of 2014, and I've seen a great evolution and development in this body over that time. To look at some of their historic roles, the Citizen Advisory Committee has really looked at advising the Board of Managers, looking at our grant program, primarily our cost-share grant program, reviewing all those grants and providing recommendations to the Board of Managers. Also our Cynthia Krieg Education Grant Program, reviewing all those applications as well, and again, providing those recommendations to the board. From time to time, the Citizen Advisory Committee has been asked to review award programs such as our upcoming Watershed Heroes, and also over this last year and beyond, providing guidance on our comprehensive management plan. And the Citizen Advisory Committee has been one of those key advisory boards, provides support and guidance on that document. So in addition to those basically advising the board, also they've been supporting the community. Oftentimes the Citizen Advisory Committee has been kind of eyes and ears out in our community and provide those comments back at a committee level, and many of those comments have come back to you as Board of Managers. So looking at the future, kind of the evolution of the Citizen Advisory Committee, as you well know, those grant programs have transitioned in over the last year. Our grant programs are we're basically going back to the drawing board and looking to see what those grant programs will look like in the future. Our Cynthia Krieg Education Grant Program has ended, and so with the end of those grant programs, it provided an opportunity for what is the future role of the Citizen Advisory Committee. How can we best use their time and talents? So as we have talked about this, I should take a step back. how this got on the agenda this evening is the Citizen Advisory Committee brought this up at the October 11th CIC meeting. Manager Loftus was in attendance at that meeting, and she brought back an update to you as a board on the October 12th meeting. And so that's kind of helped to spur the discussion of how can we best support the CAC and how can we help direct and provide them some focus over the upcoming year. So in terms of staff, we're recommending to provide more structure. Really looking at the CAC as a kind of an annual cycle, looking at that January to December timeframe, providing direct support in terms of kind of continuing education, looking at that annual cycle and really plugging in key milestones on that annual basis and how we can provide information to them in terms of the basic background on the watershed district, our policies, our missions, and then also providing opportunities for them to meet staff, to have department overviews, to learn about some of our key projects and our key programs, but really being mindful of, structuring that on an annual basis. And also looking at opportunities in terms of the capacity building, how we can best place them or place them in the community and get that input from their diverse backgrounds that we have. I think James is going to go into a little bit more detail of kind of looking at the role of the CAC and how we might best fit them into our strategic mission and how we move forward.
Thank you. Sounds good. So before I jump right in to some ideas on how we might collectively work with the CAC to direct their energies, I wanted to briefly recap some of our organizational trajectory. I couldn't resist recycling some goofy clip art here, but as you know, over time, the board systematically focused on creating clarity and ultimately alignment across the organization, starting in, and we've reviewed these milestones before, but 2009 to 2000.
We move them right to left or left to right?
Depends on which day. I think generally we're on the right end of the spectrum there. So in 2009 to 2012, the board spent a considerable amount of time providing clear direction on the type of planning and implementation models that it wanted to focus on developing model after community works. 2012 to 2014, there's a lot of focus on calibrating our leadership and governance framework for how we're going to work as an organization. And then working the rest of the time on creating a vision policy with a balanced urban ecology policy, reinforcing the organizational culture, and most recently with the strategic plan, establishing a goal of a desired level of alignment for the organization's programming, its people, its finance, and its technology. So with that history, it kind of makes sense just where we are in that chronology for us to really take a step back and think about how we can then use the Citizens Advisory Committee in our whole organizational structure to be more focused and aligned with the whole rest of the mass of the organization that we've created. So that's just to say that the discussion is timely. In terms of the strategy and organizational focus and alignment, this is obviously all repeat now, but the board's established the balanced urban ecology policy as the vision for the organization's vision for the future, which emphasizes the social and economic benefits of the watershed district's natural resource work, as well as its fundamental philosophy and way of doing business and its emerging culture. And so underneath the umbrella of a balanced urban ecology, we've got two principal ways in which we're achieving our clean water mission, and that's building high-impact capital improvements, basically physically altering the landscape, whether the watershed district's leading those efforts in focal geographies like Minnehaha Creek or 6 Mile, or whether we're responding to assist communities or the private sector in making their own projects more ultimately beneficial to the environment and our overarching ecological goals. And as you know, those projects are becoming more focused at the system scale, not one-off individual projects. That's a little bit of background on that prong of our strategy. And I think second, this is something that we're still actively working on, but the second strategy is to essentially change our operating environment, to change the environment that we're working in by advocating and making change in local, regional, state policy or rules or procedures to essentially further enhance how land and water are planned together, which is in part terms of how we're going to leverage all of our different programs and which local, regional, and state policies we might be targeting for change. We've got some ideas. We've got some work sessions set up with Smith Partners, and we're talking about it internally. But we have outlined a couple preliminary ideas that we've talked about with the board. For example, integrating water as a system, an underlying system or constraint for long-range comprehensive planning. And something that we're doing really actively with the city of Victoria right now as they outline their growth targets for the next 20 years in the west side of town in their annexation area. So essentially changing municipal norms to engage the watershed district early in comprehensive planning processes, or at the regional scale, changing regional planning standards and frameworks with agencies like the Met Council for how watershed systems can be incorporated into municipal comprehensive plans, but also regional systems plans. At a different scale, we've talked about the watershed district becoming involved very early in the capital improvement program development for cities or small area plans. An example is we've been meeting with the city of Shorewood for the last couple of weeks, and they have a whole number of drainage issues on the west side of town, and they're planning their development, they're planning their transportation, they're laying out a 10-year CIP for roads, and we're at the table figuring out how they work their way through their road projects, how they'll be solving drainage issues and improving water quality with transportation investments that they're making around the capital improvements that the district's making. We've also talked about just the private development that cities are responsible for permitting and how we're involved in that work really early, both by creating the perception for the private development community that we add value and save money and produce better outcomes if we're involved early, and then both at the municipal level too, where we're involved at pre-sketch plan versus after preliminary plat. And so those are just a couple of the examples of how we want to work, I think, in a more focused way to be changing, again, local, regional, land use, and water planning paradigms. So those are two of the principal arms of our strategy approach under downstream ecology. So with that said, I think our main goal with the CAC would be to increasingly align them with the priorities that fit under those two prongs. Increasing the understanding and support for the direction of the organization, the strategic priorities, just some sort of baseline understanding, but then focusing, aligning, synchronizing the CAC's annual agenda with the priorities that are set by the board. And this is something that we do as an organization, and then it ripples through the planning and policy committee. We say, here are the things that we'd like to target for discussion and accomplish in the next calendar year. And there's no reason we shouldn't be synchronizing that with the Citizens Advisory Committee agenda and creating the right level of feedback loops. So as we're working through priority projects, regional planning, or policy initiatives, that they know what we're doing every step of the way and can guide, advise, inform, and steer some of that work. So some tools to focus the CAC program, I guess, some simple tools, really just revolve around being more intentional and structured about how we program our agenda. I don't think it's got to be all that complicated. And so as the board gets in the habit of annually creating a direction for and priorities for its policy initiatives for the planning that's 2 years out or for the projects that are in the hopper, sitting down and making sure in October, November, December, we're having those same conversations with the Citizens Advisory Committee, make sure Advisory Committee is in lockstep rather with the board. Darren talked about a couple different ways that we might do that, and there's basically, I think, 4 areas just off the cuff. This isn't a definitive list where we can focus the CAC. I think policy and projects are 2 strategic prongs, so it would make sense that we carve out a work plan under policy, and we carve out a work plan to engage them in our project work. Ongoing education is something that's always been needed for the Citizens Advisory Committee. Usually we get a new, at least 20-30% turnover in a year where we're adding new membership. So at the beginning of the year, there's always a couple meetings where we're educating people on the Watershed District's vision, its philosophy, its mission, and then throughout the year, programs show up and provide education on what the programs do, provide staff exposure, there's technical training, choice to use the Citizens Advisory Committee as liaisons. We do have advisory committee members right now that are engaged in planning commission activities or sit on the Big Island committee and report back. And so I think using the advisory committee as a two-way communication channel where they can take our message out and then they can essentially create a higher level of situational awareness by doing environmental scans around the district and then bringing that information back in sort of an auxiliary capacity for staff. We can't attend every council meeting, every planning commission meeting, read all the minutes, know every development. So plugging them into the community in ways that match their passion, interest, or skill set, and then bringing that information back in a real program way to funnel that information up to staff, I think could be quite useful. And then in those four areas, just developing a program and a meeting schedule so we have some foresight on what's on the docket, what's on the agenda, and which staff need to be programmed to attend. This is something that we do with President White on a regular basis for the board agenda. There's no reason we can't do something similar with the advisory committee agenda, so we know what's coming, and that might create a sense of a little bit more direction too. So here's a pretty simple way of maybe breaking that down. This is all for illustrative purposes and examples. This isn't, again, an exhaustive or definitive list. But if those are your four areas where we might engage the CAC, and you might say there's only 2 or there's 8, that's something that we can do on an annual basis. But if we like the idea of creating a work plan that focuses them on core policy initiatives or engages them in projects, we like the idea of continuing to educate them and involve them out in the community through a liaison program. You can then break that down quarterly and put together some specific initiatives. So as I mentioned, in the policy bracket, we're going to be taking 2-3 years, I think, to really focus on a strategic approach to moving the needle on the land use water planning paradigm that we currently operate under and try to change that paradigm. Once we figure out what that is, or as we're figuring out what that is, I think the Citizens Advisory Committee should be aware and advising and steering that as a part of the steering process. Similarly, as Darren mentioned, so going back to the drawing board and developing a grant program that's much more responsive to our communities based on the capital improvement programs they're running or development patterns that they're seeing. So developing that program is going to be a focused effort for Becky and company in 2018. So how we develop the policy framework for that program, how it's going to work, and then how we get the message out to the communities seemed like that would be a good idea to involve them in. We've also talked about making our regulatory program more efficient and more streamlined while not losing the level of environmental protection that we've committed to at a policy level. So we have talked about, after the comprehensive plan finishes, starting to reevaluate our regulations and find ways that they can sync up and connect a little bit more easily with the municipal planning process, permitting process. And then there's other major policy initiatives that the board undergoes on a routine basis, on a cyclical basis, like the budget. So you could plug in, the budget happens every year, happens at a certain time every year. You could easily put that on the calendar, and those things are easy to program and a way to build community awareness, support, and get feedback on the biggest policy that you're setting in terms of where you're putting the money and the levy. In the project category, we've erred away from involving the Citizens Advisory Committee and the board in the detailed design processes of projects and sort of picking out all the materials and that sort of thing. We've kept the board, worked with the board rather, to help steer things.
I would have something to say.
Correct. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
It's definite.
Yeah. Aaron? So, we're looking at projects from this regional planning scale, so 6 Mile. I think as we're developing 6 Mile and muddling through that, we're essentially picking up this organic framework that we developed in the Greenway, where we're working on individual project negotiation basis. We said, let's create a reproducible method that we can move around as sort of a model in a machine. And when we engaged in 6 Mile planning, that's not something that the Citizens Advisory Committee were really involved in steering and understanding why we're selecting that as a priority geography. And it would seem to me that that would be a useful thing to do in the future, as whether it's Long Lake or Painter Creek or other threats and opportunities emerge at that regional scale. It'd be great to get their advice and have them know what we're thinking, so that they come out and they're meeting with people. They know the general direction that we might be going and why. Similarly, responsive planning initiatives. I mentioned Shorewood. There's a host of others where communities are now coming to us because they know they can come early and say, how can you help me do X, Y, Z? Just letting the board and citizens advisory committee know what opportunities we're being presented with, how we're evaluating those, how we're prioritizing those. Not necessarily on an individual project scale, but again at that systems level, that we're working with X community on this large scale idea is something that they should know. Individual capital projects that we're developing, making sure that they know which projects we're putting out in the community, whether it's the work that we're doing in the private sector like Lenore, or park projects like the Wasserman Park project. And then again, there's a fixed piece there, like the annual CIP. That's something that we do every year that we should be making sure that they're in tune with and looking at both the budget and the CIP. We do that, but it's not heavily programmed. It's not pre-scheduled. And so just making that a more fixed thing, I think would be advantageous. For ongoing education, there's the annual kickoff training, just getting everybody with a common understanding of what we're about, our philosophy, what our priorities are for the year, setting the agenda, as well as reporting back on the strategic action plan or what changes programs are making as they're going through them. That's something that we'll be looking at in 18. And then there's all the technical training that Darren and staff already provide in terms of stormwater management, how rain gardens work, all those different types of programs that we're already doing, making sure that those are metered in between the areas where we're seeking their advice on policy or their guidance on project development. Managing progress.
It seems like there's such a wonderful new tool to background new CAC members, and that's our 10-year plan. And if that existed when I came on the board 2.5 years ago, boy, I would have made a really more rapid accommodation to the organization and its goals. And I just think that that should be required reading, because it really kind of tells all about us.
Manager Rognes, Board of Managers. I think the education will happen on a variety of fronts. I think it will be in the form of face-to-face presentations at the monthly meetings, but there's also a lot of written materials like the comprehensive plan, like all the videos that have been produced for the 50th anniversary year, all the fact sheets on projects. The website has a wealth of information. So there's a variety of ways to support that ongoing education in addition to the month-to-month face-to-face presentations that might happen.
Right, and that last category there is something that I mentioned earlier, is just more clearly defining this liaison role or ambassador role. So I do think that there's value where it works in having our advisory committee members participate in outside planning commission meetings, or the Big Island Steering Committee, or those types of things, and bring that information back. And I think mapping out when there's key discussions at board meetings, key discussions at planning committee meetings, key discussions at council meetings, just providing those opportunities would, I think, focus people's efforts on the Citizens Advisory Committee to stay in tune with what we're doing internally, but what's happening outside. So these are a few ideas. They're obviously very rough. We wanted to come to you early and see if something like this could make sense, and if you had any feedback or direction. To me, I think this could provide a more focused work plan with concrete objectives at the beginning of a year. It's a way that we could do it in a manner that's more aligned with the priorities that the board's setting as they're setting them, instead of afterwards. And I think the other thing is, just from a logistical and management perspective, it allows the board and staff and CAC to map expectations and improve connections between policy setting by the board, advice by the CAC and staff, and program things out more, 60, 90 days in advance, improving how we forecast our work. And doing that, we'll probably find that we can eliminate meetings that aren't needed. The CAC, I think, meets every single month of the year, and I think if we program things out, we might say we need 18 meetings in a year, or conversely, depending on what we're covering that year, we might only need 6 meetings in a year. So I think it'll help define the agenda and the schedule a little bit more. Another thought here that Darren and I just kind of mulled over, and this was in 5 minutes beforehand, I think there's such diverse and high level of talent on the CAC, and when you bring an initiative to 19 people, the discussions just naturally can become unwieldy. And so we're thinking that if you provided this as sort of a menu of areas that the district was going to engage the CAC, if whether they were subcommittees or task forces, if you took 19 people and divided them, self-selected, into 5 groups of 3 to 5 people, they could work within their passion area, within their interest, within their core competence and skill set with staff on a particular program, and then report back every other month to the full group. However, it'd be a much more efficient way of doing it, I think, but that could be up for discussion. So as an example, we've got government relations people on the CAC from the Nature Conservancy. I could see them being involved in navigating with us how we might create a wetland restoration, landscape, land conservation program for 6 Mile, and network with the nonprofits. And there's other people that would have a similar interest and skill set that we can really leverage and use, and then bring recommendations back to the CAC. We have people that are already embedded in, as I mentioned, more of a municipal framework, so connecting them to the Planning Commission circuit or what have you, and having them report back. So sort of defining a program that engages the whole CAC, but then breaks people into subsets based on skill and interest area where they can plug in and add even more value because they're focused on a particular initiative where we can really leverage their skills in a more concentrated way. Would be helpful. Yep, that's all I have.
Oh, okay.
I just had one other thought. The policy and planning committee, I think we meet once a month now. Correct? Maybe the months that they don't meet, or we try to adjust the discussions so that they can attend the policy and planning committee meeting, and especially when we've got some issues that are going to be bigger and broader, going to take some time to figure out, because having them their input on a much earlier basis than when we got a project figured out, tell them what it is, because I think that you get a lot more benefit of coming to the planning committee meetings and getting a report from staff on something that was already discussed by the board, or at least by the committee and voted.
Other comments from the board? Questions, Mr. Walker?
President White, Board of Managers, I should note that we have several CAC members with us this evening, and we'll share much of this framework with them at the November meeting to kind of get their thoughts and as we move forward. So it'll be a collective thoughts from you as a board, from staff and the CAC to see how we can best form 2018 and recognize that this is going to be a work in progress as we develop the structure and see what works and see what we can add in future years. But I think the end product will be a much more engaged CAC, a better informed CAC, and I think we'll have more structure and benefit all bodies involved.
There's nothing worse than going to a meeting that you don't have anything to do at, and so I love the idea of focusing the attention of the CAC on things that interest them. People are going to have different levels of time commitment and different interests and different professional backgrounds, and it's really nice to take that, I think. Angela?
I just want to thank both of you for kind of taking a step back and really thinking about this and giving it a fresh look at how was it programmed, what can we do differently. I really appreciate that. And then looking at it through our strategic plan
plan lens, I think it's really smart and it makes a lot of sense. And it's a lot of these ideas, and I support all of them, but a lot of them are, like you said, internal or systemic kind of program that the organization develops. But I'm excited for the CAC to talk about it in November to get their input on what their thoughts are. But I think what might be really exciting in 2018 is their input on the grant program development, should be an exciting topic. And then I really like the streamlining regulations, their involvement on that. I think could be really tangible and actionable in 2018. I support all of them, but I think those two are pretty exciting. And I'm curious, not only if the board supports this, but what the CAC thinks about it. Obviously, their buy-in is very important. But thank you guys for laying it out and taking a fresh look. And sometimes that's really helpful, and I think it is helpful in this case. So thank you.
Manager Loftus, Board of Managers. Basically a big thank you goes to the CAC. I mean, they, as James mentioned, they're a diverse body. They're giving of their time and their talents to the watershed district, and a lot of these ideas stemmed out of those meetings where they're eager to give back to the board and provide their support and guidance. And so I think this will allow us to better do that in the future.
Thank you, Manager Olson.
Just a comment, one of the things that I value a lot, even from that brand new member of the CAC, is we've got staff that lives in the science world and lives in the jargon world and the acronyms and everything else. And then you got the board, who sometimes needs to have it translated. And then you have the citizens who showed up tonight. This room was, standing room only. And even when the citizens are here, there's different levels of understanding with everybody in the room. So when you have a board member we as a board have an idea, and the CAC has 5 people who are in their first year, if it makes sense to them and they agree with the concept, it's probably a pretty good indication that it's the feedback we need that we're doing the right thing. Okay, so I know that the guys who are sitting here are they're all veterans and they understand a lot deeper what's going on. But even at that brand new person, given enough education in their first couple of meetings, and you might just have a separate meeting for them. If you're a new person, we're having our orientation training for the CAC on such and such a date, and then have that special. But as long as they can take a look at our ideas and endorse them, and give us the sign that it makes sense to them, that's very valuable to us.
Or doesn't make sense.
Or doesn't.
Sometimes that's more valuable.
Other thoughts, Manager Reynolds?
The tension surrounding this meeting was Arden Park, and I wonder if there is some way, we're not counter-espionage agents or on the CAC, but just arriving at a meeting, preparing for Arden, and kind of putting together your hour. Wouldn't it be nice to have a CAC member who is, a card-carrying citizen who actually, has something, to offer a group of people that don't have that sort of background, some background, just the business of the fish going downstream in a natural way as opposed to floating over the dam. My goodness, a citizen could have explained that.
Well, thank you very much. We'll look forward to talking about you folks. Now we'll hear from you folks after next meeting.
Thank you.
some suggested changes from manager office just to add some completion date and some timeline information in an additional column. And also I added kind of a status update column as well, so that we can kind of look at how that's moving forward and at each committee meeting, and then when it's presented at the 14th in its final completed form, we'll be able to kind of track and see how those changes have progressed. There's a lot of moving parts right now. We've had some discussions, both non-public and public discussions that reflect human resources issues. We're making some good progress. James and I are working closely to kind of define the new assistant district administrator role, and what needs to happen within the district to make sure that that new role is successful and not overburdened with all of the current duties plus additional duties. So we're looking at how to make sure that as we structure that, we're delegating authority and responsibility and accountability to others to make sure that that's successful. So that's coming forward. Telly, James, and I have discussed making sure that when we're putting together the transition for the education communication staff into the transition and integration into the planning and project work group, to better align around strategic priorities, that's done in a real thoughtful and mindful way to make sure that we kind of have that kind of somewhat like we were even talking about with the CIC, so that we can kind of have that predictability and kind of that longer term look going forward, so we can have a cooperative and helpful planning. And for some of the changes in positions, some changes are kind of elevating certain types of roles, and some are reducing certain types of roles. And although we don't plan to do a full conflict class study of the whole organization at this time, we do plan to have kind of an outline to make sure that the changes we're making do kind of fit within our existing structure. And then at some point in the future, in a year or so down the road, we want to make sure that we kind of do that full-blown conflict class review to make sure that what we're doing, and maybe even to reconsider.
I'm a little confused by that.
And maybe even to reconsider whether the current grid that we have and kind of evaluation system is as robust as it needs to be to allow for retention and progression and professional development.
I didn't think we were going to delay anything for a year.
I'm sorry, I didn't. The implementation of the plan will happen at the beginning of 2018. But I don't think we're going to have a full time to develop full position descriptions for some new roles and to do a full common class study across the whole organization like was done in 2015, 14, I think. The plan was to redo that every 2 or 3 years. In fact, that was started to do that in 2016. We decided not to do that and to embark on the HR study instead. So I think that once we get things sorted out, there's kind of that push and pull internally of trying to do things quickly and making sure we don't make mistakes that we have to kind of recover from down the road. So we'll try to have an expedited way to evaluate and classify the new rules that fit within the existing structure. And then at some point in the future, we're going to have to reevaluate.
We're not going to have the existing structure. We've got a new structure. So maybe I'm just looking for something that wasn't agreed upon. But I thought we were having this new structure, and we're going to have the new job descriptions and the new system in place by the first of the year. That was my understanding, but
that's also my understanding, Manager Miller. And what I guess I'm saying in terms of the structure is that, for instance, a position like an assistant district administrator does not currently exist as a job description in our ranking and classification of positions. So that's going to need to be a new rank that we're going to try to slip in between other areas so that it's at an elevated level of responsibility, compensation, accountability, all those different types of things that are commensurate with those increased levels of responsibility. So I'm not saying the whole structure is new. I'm just saying we're trying to figure out how to determine the compensation and kind of some of the authorities that go along with those things using the work that was done a couple of years ago in terms of classification of positions and compensation based on work and studies at that time to make sure that those are competitive and more sometimes when we anticipate the future potential for violations, there are some remedies that are dispelled out into the conservation easement for those things. There are some limits to those remedies also, so we need to define those and want to bring that back to the board, and also to just make sure that the board is fully aware of some of the current approach that we have to monitoring the easement. One of the kind of recent developments is that we, according to the conservation easement, it specifies our point of contact is with the city administrator and not with city council members or mayor or kind of elected policymakers. And on Wednesday this week, Laura and I met with the new city administrator, Dustin Reith, and also with Adam Edwards, who's the director of public works. And we've talked about their efforts to make sure that their governance processes are streamlined and better defined in terms of the role of things like the Big Island Nature Park Committee and as its advisory capacity to the city council, and then as our connection as the communication with the city staff. They were very amenable to make sure that, and that we stressed the value and the role the district has in the establishment of the park and our strong interest to make sure that it's not compromised going forward. And they committed to being partners in that process going forward. And one of the things that we'll do is have, above and beyond any site visits, we will have regular, at least twice a year, meetings with the city of Orono, where we can talk about various partnership opportunities, but one of the agenda items will always be the Big Island. And probably in the fall, like this time of year, and then also in the spring, is the initial time that we thought that would be important to touch base to make sure we're all on the same page and can anticipate things that are upcoming and review things that have recently happened.
So do I understand you're communicating with the elected officials on a periodic basis about the easement?
The elected officials have been communicating with us, had been communicating and also meeting with us. The initial meeting I think I had with one of the council members was with President White, and I've had some subsequent meetings and conversations with her. We attended their Big Island Committee, which is made up of a few city council members and also residents as part of that committee, advisory committee. And our goal is to, of course, be responsive to policymakers as questions arise, but our primary channel of significant limbs of some trees that are along a hillside. Um, we are pretty limited in terms of what types of response we can do, remedies we can seek from that. The conservation easement and our authorities don't allow us to actively go and levy fines against them or any kind of punitive damages, or we can't go in and replace and change things and charge them for it. It requires going through a legal process and legal action.
Well,
Yes.
I suggest we do that. This is a public improvement that was funded by the state and in the watershed district. And Brother not being reciprocated, we should seek the legal remedy. If there's a better chance and better opportunity to develop a cooperative relationship without that, then we should seek that path. And I think we should just kind of have a look for the risks and benefits of those different options, and we can bring those back to maybe fully flesh those out in both committee and or at a board meeting on 9th of November.
I guess my response is acknowledging Manager Miller's kind of emotion, because I feel it as well. We started talking this kind of staff and policymaker, and somebody on staff said, go to the board. And understanding that there's a gray area that they're operating within, and not reaching out to say, hey guys, in the spirit of cooperation,
have that picture right outside council chambers. So it's just a